let's get started. So, I've just gone to the edge of the anvil and put a mark where 4 inches is, and now I'll chuck it up with my guillotine tool with a set of fullering dies. And this is going to isolate the material we're going to make into our tang. Got my material isolated, now it's time to forge this out into a tang. So, nothing to it really. Using the horn speeds things up a good bit when drawing out. So, just keeping at it. So, here's the tang after being forged out. I've got about 8.5 inches or so. Right now it's both longer, wider, and thicker than I needed. It's just roughly to the front of the dimensions. That'll give me plenty of material to play with during the fit up. I'm going to go ahead and let this cool off so I can hold it by this end and I'll start working on the point. Alright, we got the other end of our steel hot. It's time to start working on that point. Forging out a two-sided point on a big piece of stock like this can take a little bit of doing. But just keep at it, you'll have it forged out before you know it. What I'm doing now is forging in the distal taper of the sword. I've already taken a couple of heats so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. You can see how the metal's much thinner up here. What I'm trying to do is slowly taper it back towards the handle. And of course I'm using the horn of my anvil for this because it's faster. But the blade needs to be both the thinnest and the narrowest at the tip. And you want to take the sword in a good bit past its finished dimensions, because once you forge in the bells, you're going to gain a good bit more width. You would take it in even further if you were forging in the fuller. And because I'm grinding in the fuller, I'm not worried about that. So, like I said, just slowly carry that taper back towards the handle. Keep it nice and even as you go. I've switched to the flat of the anvil because there's not as much work to do back here towards the hilt. But it's coming along. Right now, back here at the shoulder is 2 inches wide. I want to take that into about 1.5 inches, and then once it's beveled again, it should come out to about 2 inches or so. Well, we're starting to look like a sword. Hey folks, John here, Old Hickory Forge. Welcome back for part 2 of the Viking sword build. So before I do the rough grind, I want to go ahead and get the fittings, the guard, the pommel made, the handle block roughed out, and all that. Just it's less work later on down the line. So first thing we got to do, obviously, tang's thicker than the sword, so we got to thin this down, make it perfectly flat, dress up these tang shoulders, and then we'll go ahead and get the guard made. To make the guard, what I've got here is a piece of 3/4 inch square mild steel, cut off at 4.5 inches. I'm going to taper both ends, slot punch it, and then fit it to the tang of the sword. But anyway, let's get started. Alright, I got the tang roughed in and tapered. It needs to be both the thickest and the widest up here at the shoulder. It tapers real nice, so that way you can fit a guard good. But anyway, now it's time to go ahead and fix up these shoulders to be fitted to the guard. I actually don't want these square. I want them slightly tapered down because I want to fit a curved guard on this. So I'm just going to file kind of at an angle. So there we go. Didn't take much work at all. So I've decided to go ahead and burn in the handle block while I'm at it before I do the rough grind. So what I've got here is a block of maple. I'm using maple because it's a really tough, really strong hardwood, because I have a lot of it laying around and because I don't much care for it on knife handles. I just don't like the way it looks. And something like this where it's going to be covered up is perfect for it. So got 2 holes close together drilled in the top, 1 hole drilled in the bottom. I've got the tang of the sword and the forge heating up. And then we'll just stick the sword in the vise and push this baby on here. So nothing to it really. Just chuck the sword up in the vise, push a block onto it. Might take you a few heats, but you'll get there. Once you're actually through to the other end of your block, it moves a good bit quicker. See? To heat treat the sword, I've broken out my old 3-burner atmospheric forge because it's a little easier to heat a large area at once. Got a couple of pieces of angle iron in there to kind of rest the sword vertically. If you lay it flat, the weight of the sword kind of makes it want to warp. I found out with my last one. So there's that. Over here, we got an old tank ammo tube. I sealed up the bottom of for about 5 gallons of vegetable oil. That's what we're going to be quenching in. So fingers crossed everything goes well. So first thing that's going to happen is obviously the sword has to be normalized 3 times. So I have to heat up one end, then flip it around and heat up the other, and then slowly paint the heat back and forth until I get an even enough heat on the whole thing. Can't believe I used to work in this thing. I've really been spoiled by my ribbon burner. See what I mean? Just kind of pulling the sword back and forth through the fire. Trying to get the heat nice and even. I'll slow down a little bit on the areas that need it a little bit more. So, this is the final heat before the quench. So really taking my time, making sure it's hot enough all the way across, all the way even. Alright, whole thing's nice and cherry red, still orangish, about 1500 degrees. This is where the sword gets its soul if all goes well. Didn't feel any cracks, so that's good. Wow. Dead straight, too. Good. Now it's time to finish grind it, bring it down to its final thickness, final weight, get it sharpened and everything and polished up. So, good bit of work to do, and the steel's already hard, so I've got a good sharp 36 grit belt on my grinder. I'm just going to use the contact wheel to hog off material. Just slowly bring everything down to where it needs to be. It's you know, it's kind of a slow, long process, but you'll be done before you know it. So, the sword's shaping up. I've got the fuller polished all the way up through 320 grit. That's where I'm going to leave it. So then I've got the bevels down. About about half a thickness of a dime or so. Now, next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start creating what's going to be the cutting edge. I want a convex grind on this sword, so what I'm going to do, until now I've been grinding flat against the platen at the same angle, kind of. I'm going to tilt in slightly to get kind of a stout cutting edge, and then what I'll do is take it to the slack of the belt, blend it all together, and that should give me a nice sharp edge and make the sword easier to polish. Whenever you're really hogging off material like this, it's also important to keep the sword cool to keep from damaging your temper. So what I've got here is a little pitcher, and every so often I'll just dunk the tip in my bucket of water and pour some of this over it to keep it cool. That's another reason you shouldn't wear gloves when you grind it, so you can feel the sword getting hot. But anyway, let's get this thing sharp. So, while I was waiting for the epoxy on this thing to set, I went to the store and grabbed an expired watermelon, so don't get on me about wasting food. Everybody at some point in their life has wanted to cut a watermelon with a sword, and now I have the opportunity, so I'm going to take it. Okay, let's see. Never done this before. I don't really know how to swing a sword. People put their hand behind their back when they do it, I think. Oh, wow. I really expected it to slow down more than that. I hardly felt it. How cool is that? Alright, got a piece of scrap 2x4. I just want to see if all the fittings are going to stay tight and hold up. Jeez. Guard's not loose. Bomb's not loose. I'd say that passed. So